Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us. So sorry for a little late start. My name is Monica Lee. I'm the Marketing Director for Viscosity North America, and today we're co-hosting this webinar with the New York Oracle User Group. And if you don't know a little bit about Viscosity, really quickly, we are a full Oracle stack consulting firm with core expertise in Oracle database, including RAC, Oracle Apex, zero downtime migrations, performance tuning, sorry, that was my email, and high availability. And we've also got a lot of experience with infrastructure, including engineered systems. So during today's webinar, please feel free to submit questions to our speaker, Peter. He'll get to them as he can. And if he can't get to them during the presentation, he will go over them after the fact at the end. So definitely use the time you've got with him. He's a great presenter with great content for you. So we're super excited to have him back presenting for us. Representing NYOUG today is Coleman Leviter. Coleman's going to introduce you to NYOUG and also introduce you to Peter. So enjoy today's webinar. And Coleman, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Monica. Thank Peter also for presenting today. And the topic will be application UI design on mobile device. So the New York Oracle Users Group was formed in 1984 for the exchange of ideas, assistance, and support for Oracle products. Let's see if I do. And you can connect with us on Twitter, Meetup, LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course the website, nyoug.org. And of course, reach out to the membership at the Oracle user community at oracle.com community user groups. And again, thank you, Viscosity, for hosting the series of webinars with the New York Oracle Users Group. I'd like to introduce Peter. He's an Oracle ACE director, has worked over 34 years in the IT industry, has presented at various Oracle technology conferences around the world over 360 times, a full circle. Additionally, he has won dozens of user group awards from the ODTUG, NYOG, and SEOUC. Peter's an Oracle certified master, a UTOUG board member, past board member of IOUG and NYOUG, and co-author variously with Duncan Mills, Avram, and Dr. Paul Dorsey of 8 Oracle Press books about Oracle, JDeveloper, ADF, Oracle Forms and Reports, and Oracle Designer. Again, thank you everybody for attending this series of webinars with the New York Oracle Users Group, and we have several more planned throughout February and through March. And thank you again. Peter?
All right, so you can see my screen, right?
Looks good.
All right,
Absolutely.
Excellent. Welcome everyone. So I don't think I need to introduce myself anymore. Coleman did a great job. Thank you, Coleman. And thank you, Monica, for hosting this session. So I'm going to start with my standard. Usually what you see when you go to a session like this is you see a little blurb about the speaker's company, and I don't have a company at the moment. I'm in between jobs, so this space is for rent, so feel free to send me an email or contact me somehow and we can work something out. But I will promote the New York User Group here again, which you heard about, and also Viscosity, who has all the rock stars of the Oracle technology world, book writers and Oracle ACE directors. So moving on. Yeah, usually you get a quiz or an exam after you've attended a session or a class, but we're going to start with a quiz just to get your knowledge of what, and I'm not going to be able to know, I won't see your hands raising for this, but we won't be able to know the answers, but you can test yourself. So the first question is, do you know what this symbol is? How about this one? This one? And that. So hopefully you will be able to answer at least 5 or 6 of those, maybe even all 6. And my question is, how in the world does everybody know what those symbols mean? How did we get to this point? So I thought we'd go through really briefly a short history of the Oracle development tools that Oracle's offered, and just get a sense of where we started and where we are now, and what the progression was. So we started with this tool called IAF, which was the early version of SQL Forms and Developer Forms up until Developer Forms 6.0. Works in character mode, so the usual green screen type display with just characters. And key presses were the way that you got information back to the host computer. So kind of dumb terminal mode, submitting the whole screen at once and seeing the whole screen refresh all at once. Then we moved into client server and graphical user interfaces with SQL Forms 4.0 up to Forms 6.0. And we're running the application through a runtime on the client. And that had all sorts of interesting install and runtime issues. We got to running forms in a browser, Forms 6i to 12.2, current version. And it runs in an applet. Currently, you can run it without using applet, but it uses Java within the web browser, which means you don't really need any separate install runtime. You just use your Java runtime tool. But the interface is still graphical. And then we moved to Light Client, which is before the world of Java 2 Enterprise Edition and JavaScript. And it was a technology that Oracle offered called UIX, User Interface XML, was the old acronym, or the old expansion of that acronym. And it offered HTML controls in kind of a GUI mode. There was some interactivity and some like rounded buttons, and there were some enhancements over the standard HTML components. The next wave was the Light Client, Java 2 Enterprise Edition afterwards, and also using AJAX, asynchronous JavaScript and XML, the days of Web 2.0, which is interactive pages that don't refresh all at once. There's pieces of the pages that refresh when you do something on the screen, click a button or scroll or whatever. And it looked more like the old client-server forms than it did HTML type form. So that came up with ADF Faces, Oracle's Java technology, from 10G on to 12.2, and it's still there with ADF. Now we're moving into a mobile kind of device support, and Oracle's got a number of JavaScript and other types of technologies that offer these kind of controls. So JavaScript extension toolkit, Max, the mobile extension, and Visual Builder, it's Visual Builder Studio now, and Mobile Application Framework MAF. They all have components that will display easily and efficiently on a mobile device. So the look and feel is very different, and that's kind of what we're going to focus on, where we are now. And what I did just to get a sense of comparing all of these things is I listed the different categories of mobile displays on the left, and then I put some categories of things that had changed and what the development tools were, graphics support, how data was input, navigation methods, user training, how much you needed, and what the display software was for all these. And I thought, okay, this is a great kind of chart, but getting the comparison information out of this really quickly is hard. So this really isn't a mobile aware comparison, and we can do a better analysis using a graph. So I did a graph version of this and just tried to come up with some metrics, and I just have like none, a bit, some, more, and a lot. Those are, you know, the measurements that I gave to some of these parameters. Nothing scientific, of course, but there's relative comparisons here. And then across the bottom, I've got the different technologies that I just showed for the Oracle tools, starting with character mode, going up to the mobile device. And that's kind of over time. You know, they overlap, of course, but the initial release was at a certain period. So the first thing is key presses. So we started with only key press interfaces to our applications, and the user would only send information to the host computer wherever it was, if it was on the client or if it was on some host server somewhere else, using key presses. And then when we got to client server, we were using other things other than key presses, like mouse actions and to interact with the computer. And then applet, through the different technologies up until mobile device, it was pretty much the same level of key press usage. And when we get to mobile devices, we're not using key presses that much. So it's more like, swipes and, and taps and things that you're not necessarily having to type in on a keyboard. The next parameter that we're going to look at is, we went past it, training. So in the beginning, there was quite a bit of training needed, and the training as we go through the different technologies decreased over time to when we get to mobile devices, users are expecting now to have applications that they can use immediately without having to, read or be trained. So over time, the training expectation anyway decreased, and that meant that the actual amount of training had to decrease. So the next parameter is mouse action, and that was just for client server. We didn't have mouse with character mode, and we don't have mouse now with mobile devices. We have taps and swipes instead. Graphics, of course, over time increased, pretty steeply since character mode through the client server into mobile. And then tap, swipe, and talk, of course, we're only here for mobile devices, although, for ADA compliance, you usually have to have a talk interface and maybe even a tap or a swipe on some of the earlier technologies as well. But in general, those input gestures are only applicable to the mobile. So if you put all these together, it's kind of messy, but you do see a trend, and where the technology's changed steeply. For example, this one between character mode and client server changed quite a bit in a lot of different categories, and the reason was because we got graphics. There was also a steep change when we went to interactive clients from light clients, which were mostly HTML, into interactivity, because there were, less training and more graphics and that kind of thing. But then when we get to mobile devices, you see the most changes in all of these categories, and that's kind of where we're at. There's all this, all the pieces that we've been using to do interactions and to do displays have changed. So that's where we are, and the main parameter that we're dealing with now is that the number of mobile devices is more than the world's population. That's been true for a number of years now, maybe 4 or 5. And so business users have expectations for your business applications that mirror what they are experiencing in their applications that they use outside of work. So, again, little tolerance for training, and it doesn't have, there's no, there's little time that that you have as an application developer for a user to accept your application. With a business application, users usually don't have an option, but for something like an app that you just download, say a QR app, there's dozens of QR apps out there. You try one out, and within 3 seconds you don't like it, you go to the next one. So that was some study that was done, 3-second acceptance time, and short attention span because you're using a mobile device, and probably because you're using a mobile device, you're being mobile. You're walking through a parking lot or something, and you have to complete whatever you're doing very quickly. Touch interface, of course, tap and swipe, and then orientation changes, which we really didn't have to deal with very much before mobile. So this obviously impacts what you're doing for user interface design. So that's kind of the preamble to where we are and why we're talking about this. And what I'll do now is kind of go over the principles that I've found when doing research about how to develop a user interface and how to design one. So top 3 design principles, and then we'll look at some standards that are out there that you can also rely on and take some inspiration from that will help you out just starting to get a handle on this. And then some resources for developers, which it's just kind of a miscellaneous tips and tricks kind of thing. So we'll start with the design principles. Let's see if there's been any questions before we go too far here. I don't see questions. And what about comments? Any comments? Chat. Okay, all right. So it seems like we're good for there. So let's go into some design principles. So a main challenge when you're using a mobile device is the display size variances. This was a study that was done by James Lentz, who was an IBM guy 9 years ago now, more than 9 years ago. And he published this paper, which you can get and read on the IBM website with that link below. And this is a chart that he showed in his article, which at that time displayed what the different types of mobile devices were out at that point: smartphones, tablets, netbooks, and laptops, and then the size of each of these displays for all those. So you see different boxes because there were different sizes for different types of or different brands. And of course, these days everything's grown, so smartphones are not limited to 4 inches anymore, and tablets are more than whatever that is, 8 inches. And now we've got small folding smartphones, so that isn't taken into account. But the main point is that there's a big difference in size. The other thing is the orientation can change. So you've got two things happening here. So for example, if you're showing the Amazon website in a landscape mode and then turn the device to portrait, and the display didn't reform itself, everything gets really small and hard to read. Now, Amazon doesn't do that, but that's just an example of what the problem could be if you don't take that into consideration. So when I was doing the research, I came up with a place that showed there were 20 different principles that you had to comply with to be mobile aware. And I thought, well, gee, that's quite a few. And I kept looking, and then I found another site that was showing 10. And I said, well, that's nice, and let's read those. And it turned out that those 10 actually included everything in the 20, but they were collecting them into bigger groups. So I thought, well, that's a little bit easier to understand. And I kept looking, and then I came up with the 10 really boiled down to three main principles. So that's what we're going to look at now. And within those principles are different things to think about, which I think were considered separate principles, but they really are the same thing. So the three I came up with are design for mobile first, visual, not textual, and simple navigation. So we'll look at each of these in a little more detail, and then we'll see some examples in a sample application. So design for mobile first. This means that you're using modern components for any of the frameworks that you're using. If you're using a JavaScript framework, obviously that will be fairly modern. You want to keep up to date with whatever the new versions of your frameworks are. And Java also has its own frameworks, and the newer tools like ADF have mobile aware components. So, and also Ajax, if anybody's using Ajax, that's part of the JavaScript tool set, and that would have modern components. Apex as well. So if you're an Apex developer, we'll talk about that in a second, but you can use their modern theme, and that will get you to the point where it's mobile aware. So gesture and orientation awareness, and this thing called responsive design, which means when you change the display size, or you're just moving the orientation from portrait to landscape or landscape to portrait, either way, the display will reshape itself, fold and resize. If you have a mobile only application, so your business application is intended to be only for mobile devices, then you can incorporate some of the services like camera, GPS, contacts, and adding social features is another good thing to do for users who are into that these days. So some tips: using design patterns if you can find something that works within your main corporate look and feel. Oracle has a design pattern within this Ulta UI standard, which we'll talk about, and they have skins, icons, and colors that you can take some inspiration from and maybe modify for your use. testing on the narrowest width device is important. If you're displaying only on desktop, then you have to set some type of resolution that's the minimum for a user to have on their monitor. And if for some reason your application is both desktop and mobile, then you have to test on all devices that would be the possible output devices. So you have to be sure the view will react properly to the orientation shift if it's a mobile support device. And then you have tiles that move. If you change the width, you'll see how that works. And you have seen how it works, I'm sure, in some cases, some applications. And then the containers resize automatically. That's another thing that these modern components offer you. No horizontal scrolling is one of those guidelines that we've used for many years, even in client server. Generally, the scrolling it is inconvenient if it's both horizontal and vertical. So you pick just vertical scrolling because that's what most web pages have anyway. So users are used to that. So no horizontal scrolling is just a theme that's come up that we continue in the mobile device world. So let's look at an example application. This is one, I'm showing it in Chrome here, that Oracle offers on their website, and I'll give you the link for that later on, but it's written in Jet, which is the Java extension toolkit, JavaScript extension toolkit, and they are trying to incorporate some of these standards that they've created as a part of Alta UI, their standard set for their applications, and it gives you a good demonstration of some of these principles. So I'll be using this app just to keynote some of the things that I'm showing in the slides. So for designing for mobile first, this is a desktop display. So we're showing it in a browser and a desktop, but the application has been designed so that it will also display well within a mobile framework. So if you're using a cell phone or a tablet, this will display equally well. And the components that are used to show this little dashboard are modern components that they've used from Jet. For example, this box with the picture in it and the graph down below, the pie chart down below. These are standard features that the Jet toolkit offers. So if we narrow the width of the browser, you can see that the boxes reorient themselves. And notice the order that they go in. So the order in the top is kind of showing the most important information. And so you'd want that to appear to the user first. So when you narrow the width, those three boxes still appear kind of on the top. When you narrow it further, say you're going into a landscape mode you're going into portrait mode from landscape mode on a mobile device, those three boxes are still at the top. And then if you go even further down, because you've got a small display, you see, well, these are slightly different, but you do see a different view of each of these boxes, but it's still all available. And the menu is still there, and all the key navigation features are still there. So this is all because the application uses these modern components. None of that is required coding that's needed by the developer. It's just the required coding is use the modern component. That's it. You don't have to worry about anything else. It also uses some of the things we'll talk about later, but they're the simple designs here for using the design patterns. So this is built using the Alta UI design system, and the color schemes with the fonts and simple boxes. So it's all part of the visual part. So the second one, visual not textual, and that these all kind of overlap themselves into the demonstration, but they are separate things to think about when you're doing the design. So one part of this is that you're using simple design elements. So the the things you're putting on the screen are a flat design. You don't have lots of gradated colors or gradient colors or shadows. And little chrome, the rounded boxes, you would use square boxes instead of rounded boxes. It's quicker to render and it's easier to display, quicker to display. And then make sure things are easy to read. So emphasizing important content, like you saw the important things in that demo application were on the top. Saturated colors, you'll see that also in that sample application, because there may be ambient light. If you have a mobile device, you're maybe walking around, maybe outdoors, so you're competing with outdoor light. Using color to highlight important data. Big icons and buttons, because the display could get really small and then you may not be able to read it if it's not big enough. Large fonts, same reason. And using graphs just to display information quickly. Like the difference between that table of parameters that I showed for the user interface, the different user interfaces in Oracle's development history, and then the graph with the lines. So that the graph of the lines is a little bit easier to read. You can get the picture better than just reading lots and lots of text. But overusing graphs can defeat the purpose, because you get overwhelmed with graphics. So we're going to look at some of these principles back in the sample application. So again, most important content first. That was one of the visual, not textual things, and that I showed that with the moving boxes. Using analytics, the visual, the graphs, and also you see the little icons in the lower left here, appointments and tasks, are showing data within an icon, within a bubble attached to an icon. And the icon is something that the user could look at and become accustomed to, so they don't necessarily have to read the word to understand what this is about, which makes it much easier to absorb the information and to get something really quickly. Another technique that they use is colors representing different numbers, different colors for different numbers. So there, you could have a range of numbers that are in this kind of cyan, light cyan color, maybe not the 90 to 100, and then the 80s would be this kind of lighter blue color. And again, you wouldn't have to necessarily read the actual number and absorb that. You could just see the color. The hovering the mouse shows this little pop-up which gives you more information, and that's kind of a common thing in graphs now, but it's another example of getting more information or showing the important information and then being able to get detail either by the mouse hover or a click. So this could, if I clicked on this box and they had something attached to it, it could drill in and show you the data that makes up that particular section of the pie. So these are all really different ways to show data in a visual way that are more visual than textual. You do have to have some labels sometimes, but there's the predominance of having symbols and icons and colors representing something rather than just text. So you can think about this different, how different is this from the old character mode days where everything was character? You had to do a lot of reading to get information. And large fonts. So you see, the important things pop out at you. And yeah, okay. Now, another thing, if we click on this person, which just happens to be Stephen King, who's the president, we can get down to details about him. And you see icons that represent the phone number. Well, this would be probably like a landline or an office phone, and a cell phone number and an email address. And in the days of character mode, we would have had to put the word office phone, the word mobile phone, the words mobile phone, and the word email here, instead of having these icons. But these icons are pretty easy to understand, and if not, you can even have a mouse hover bubble that shows up to show what they are. And same thing for Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. These symbols are universally known, so you don't have to put the actual word there. So this is another example of being visual and not textual, using standard icons instead of text. Okay, so next and last is simple navigation. So make sure it's easy to return to the opening page, and you can use breadcrumbs, which is something that we've been using for a while. It's the map at the top of the page, usually under a menu or something, which shows the pages that you visited, so you can click on the links that you've visited before and go directly to that page instead of having to go back. Or a content link, so something like a pie chart section where you click and you can get to more information about that data piece. 2-minute tasks, I mentioned, walking through a parking lot, so trying to make the tasks short spurts as opposed to spending an hour on a page. Summarizing essential data, and then having drill ins like on that pie chart again. Shallow menus, if you do have a menu system like a pull down menu, it's difficult to access more than 2 levels. So click on the top menu bar, and then all the menu options that you have should appear for that particular menu item, instead of having to click on one of those to get another menu that you pick something from. It's easier to get just directly to the page with 2 levels. Scrolling vertically only, we talked about horizontal, avoiding horizontal, and then alternative views for the same data. So it may be that it's easier to see something. Users might like to see something in one way, and other users might like to see something in another way. So you want to provide the display that the users are would assimilate the best. And then using data entry with lists. So we can look at some of those examples in the sample application. First of all, if we started at the dashboard, notice that there's links to navigate to different pages on the top. And then if you get to people, this just shows everybody. You can look at the list either as a card view, which shows each person with some details about and the links to their contact information, or org chart. And you can also see it as a list. So it's almost the same data, but in a list as opposed to a card view. So different ways to look at it. And there's a search here, so you can look at, you can drill down to matching employee records just using a self-reducing list. As you type, it reduces without you having to click the search button. And then drilling into one of these employees will get you the details about that employee, just like you did from the homepage. And then each of these has its own set of pull downs. These are kind of like tab pull downs, which you see an about page, which is just the information with their address and hire date. And then performance, which is a graph. And notice how that animation worked. So that's just a feature of this particular chart component. And compensation, same thing, animation in these 2 different types of charts. And then pop-up information as you hover the mouse over each piece is, again, part of the, this is not something that you would program. This is something that the component would give you. And then showing the org chart, who's their direct report. And then drilling into that person, you can see that information about that person. So navigation back and forth, and being able to get back to the general list or the dashboard with a simple click. Another common thing, obviously, is the username at the top, and settings or preferences, about, sign out. Those are usually in that particular pull down, but that's another navigation item. The other one that you see pretty commonly is that if you click on the logo, it will take you back to the home page. So these are all kind of expected and common, and things that users wouldn't have to be trained on at all. Searches, well, you saw the sample in that application, but selecting criteria from lists is always better. You can have users, they don't have to type. and autocompletion, like I had with, well, autocompletion being the words fill in automatically, or a possible list of words fill in automatically, as you see in things like Google, aiming for a single field for searching, and then searching all different fields based on that single parameter. And then voice enabled if you do that, like Google's got voice enabling now. So these are all things you can work into search, and that's kind of a navigation thing. Okay, standards. So this is the sample that I was given in 1998, and I've changed the logos to protect the innocent. Although this company would never be doing this these days, it's still better to protect the innocent. And the graphics department said, well, you've got to develop your application in Forms 4.5 like this. So we had to try to come up with a Forms 4.5 application that had these components in it. And it really, at that point, was not possible to get that exact look and feel. So there had to be a compromise, but it was a big challenge, and kind of a little bit of a battle with the graphics department, because they had some clout with the executives. So really not mobile aware. The next one was also 1998, different client, and the business user came up with this screen, which was, they were very proud of it because it came out of Microsoft Access, which you could do this wood grain background. And of course, you could do that in Forms. And again, this was Forms 4.5. But did you want to do this in Forms? And aren't those field prompts hard to read against that wood grain background? So, we probably could have done something like that. Not exactly. The fonts, probably. That thing at the top, it could be a graphic. Yeah, we could have done it, but did we really want to? And the point that I'm trying to make here is that there really were no standards or general industry guidelines for developing applications, so you had to come up with your own. So this really wasn't mobile aware either. So what we were doing is trying to find information in books. So there was one called Secrets of Effective GUI Design, which, in the early days of client server was pretty good. And then when we got to the web, there was web pages that suck and also son of web pages that suck. So you were looking at bad design and trying to come up with what good design would be. But again, no industry standard. So Oracle came up with Alta UI, which we found out about at the 2014 Oracle Open World Conference. And it was developed for the Fusion applications, which are now called Oracle Cloud applications, so that they could have a common look and feel for all of those. And they wrapped this under their user experience department, the UX effort. So you can get to these pages and take a look at all that. So we're going to look at the UX website, or the Alta UI website here, and you'll see 4 different categories of things that you can look at. And this is all really just descriptive things about standards, but they have gone into it fairly deeply, and it's a result of their user experience testing. So they've taken users into user acceptance labs and user testing labs to find out how they react with applications and come up with this best practices for their applications. And it's worth looking at because they've done this research, and you can kind of take advantage of it. So the gallery is really interesting. It's visual displays of different types of screens. For example, if you need a branding area on your page, you can look at samples like this or this and say, okay, well, they've come up with this as a probable best practice, so we could probably use that. Or a dialogue. If you're doing a dialogue page or a screen, this is one option for dialogue. This is another option, and you can see the components within those. Master detail, if you're doing a master detail, this is what they've come up with for master detail. Master on the left, detail on the right. So it's good just to look at the samples that they've given for that. And the next one is demos, which include the one that I've been showing you, the Work Better app. And at the moment, this live demo button is that link is broken, but I can show you the link that works later. Fix It Fast app is one that is shown in a mobile emulator, so you can get an idea of how that works. Tips, this is just a list of things that you want to that you want to consider. And the style sheets on this seems to be broken at the moment, but all the text is there, and you'll see one that says designed for mobile first. So that's agreeing with the principle that I came up with as a common theme for a lot of the different pieces. And the last part is visual. So this is where I concentrate on the visual, not textual, and what category, what parameters and categories are you using to guide your design. So, and then samples, I guess, of some of this stuff too. So it's worth looking at that just to get an example of what Oracle has been doing as far as research. Oh, so these are the screens. I just have them here too if you want to look at them later. So we've looked at all these. And tips, actually, this is what tips looks like when the style sheet's working. Style sheet doesn't work today. So again, all of this is under the user experience effort, and UX has its own website, the oracle.com/OAUX, and there they have further explanations on the overall UX strategy, including links to their rapid development kits, which are useful for frameworks like ADF, and they say that they're going to do one also for JET. And the rapid development kit is a set of sample components that are put together in a certain way that you can use kind of as is without having to come up with it yourself. And also wireframe templates, which are for PowerPoint displays to create, storybooks and things that will look like the actual application. So they use the components that will actually be rendered on the screen. Oracle Redwood is another standard, and this is brand new, well, relatively new, Oracle Open World 2019. And you've seen the Oracle website, oracle.com, which changed back then, and they also use this theme for the conference all over to guide the design. And it's based, the actual design elements are based on Asian, African, and Aboriginal art, but they've come up with an overall picture of using artificial intelligence and machine learning to guide the application flow. And it's a really compelling way to think about things, and it's worth reading about this. We don't have much more detail about it than these links below, but it's worth looking at just to see where they're moving in their cloud apps. Okay, so developer resources. Let's see, I'm going to pause to see if there's any questions yet. That seems like we're good. Okay, so developer resources, most important tip, use modern components. I think I've emphasized that several times before, but there it is in big bold print. So whatever framework you're using, whether it be JavaScript or ADF Java or Apex, use modern components. So they do things like what I was showing with this sample application. When you narrow the display, the boxes reorganize themselves. And if you're just doing HTML, I came up with this because I was trying to figure out how they do it. And this is the key piece that's needed. So if you have a display with these 5 boxes and you make it narrower, then the boxes reshape. And the way that happens is with this thing that's underlined here. The rest of this is all just to draw the boxes, but the actual style value, display :flex and flex wrap :wrap, is what makes this happen in CSS, cascading style sheets. In JET, the JavaScript extension toolkit, you've got the 2 demos to look at. And again, using the components, the modern components in JET will get you a long ways towards complying with all of these mobile requirements. Oh, yeah. So, and this is the link on the demo website, but it's broken. So if you change JET to JET-620 in this URL, then you'll get to the one that I was displaying. They'll probably fix it at some point. So Apex, if you're using Apex, then you want to use the universal theme. That's an option when you're creating an application. And when you do that, you will be incorporating the Alta UI standards and the Alta UI practices automatically. The Apex 20.1 actually aligns with the Redwood design, so you'll be even using Redwood as far as the theme. You know, as far as the AI and the ML, there's probably a little more work to do, but it's a work in progress, and you can get all this at the apex.oracle.com/UT page. So ADF, Reliance Scheismeltzer, who's the Oracle, I call him Oracle Guru Extraordinaire. He's a director of product development, I guess officially, and he's got blog entries and some YouTube videos about using ADF to implement the Alta UI principles. And some, there's even sample code out there for that. So if you're using ADF, then rely on Shai. Google, this is outside of Oracle now, it has a nice website about mobile UI design, and this is the link. And there's also a mobile friendliness site tester, which you can get from that website as well, which allows you to check your application. You can also do it within the Chrome browser. They're different different testers. The one in the Chrome browser is a little bit more limited than the one that you can get off of the Google website. But the Chrome browser, if you haven't done it, we'll look at that live here. So back in the sample application, in Chrome, you go to the menu and you do more tools and developer tools, which opens up the developer tools section on the right. And there's a link at the top that says, or an icon that says toggle device toolbar, Control-Shift-M, and that takes you into a mobile display, which you can vary. This is a Moto G4, and you can scroll, like you were doing with your finger, or you can select different types of displays, Galaxy, S5, iPhone. They haven't gotten the new iPhones in there, but iPhone 6, 7, 8 would be similar. And you can do swipe and tap, with the mouse just to emulate what you would be doing. You can also change the orientation to landscape or back to portrait and just test your website this way. And it's fully functional. So if we click on Stephen King, we should get to his details, but we're in his details. That's why. Okay. This is the menu because we were in people. So dashboard should show us the dashboard. Right, so now we're seeing all the graphs on the dashboard. And clicking on each one shows the mouse hover. So that's an option for testing your application, directly in your Chrome browser. And that's what it looks like when you're in that emulator. Okay, so I'm gonna end this with a quote, which is from Ted Turner: "How to be happy in this world, first you need a cell phone, and then you need an airplane, then you're truly wireless." So I guess that's the method for Ted Turner, media mogul. If you can afford an airplane, then you can be truly wireless. Let's see if there's any questions before we go to summary. Nope. Okay. All right, so we'll go to the summary. Summary is, mobile apps have raised the bar for UI design. Now, because users have been using apps outside the business with their mobile devices, cell phone or tablet, they're kind of requiring or expecting the applications they use in a business environment to be similar, and maybe some frustration would occur if they're not. So you kind of have to take this into account. But if you keep the top 3 principles in mind, it'll help you out enormously. Design for mobile first, visual not textual, and simple navigation and display. Looking at the pre-built patterns that you've got, like Alta UI and Redwood, and maybe even the Google website standards, will help you out a lot, because you don't have to kind of guess or try to reanalyze what you're using, in your mobile apps outside of work. You don't have to guess what was used as far as the guiding principles. So, see what's out there and study up a little bit before you get into it. Using modern components will get you a long ways towards compliance and mobile awareness. So this is the main, I guess, main message is using mobile components and paying attention to the standards. Those are the two main things. And then test using multiple devices. This has been true all along. In the days of character mode, of course, we didn't have to because all character mode displays were the same. You know, whatever it was, 24 by 80 screen. But now, and then when we got to client server, it kind of opened up the problem of, is the user using, you know, 600 by 480 or, you know, 800 by 600 or 1024 by 768, or are they a 16 by 9 ratio type display, and now we have to redesign the screen because now we have users that are using a 4 by 3 or a 6 and also 16 by 9, and they're looking different. So all of that we had to deal with client server and different resolutions and different ratios, it is still there. And mainly what we have to do now is just display or test on multiple display devices. And the Google emulator can help you out a little bit just to get a sense of what different types of cell phones would look like. But actually having the device in hand and testing the application that way is the best. All right, so we're done a little early. I guess we can chat, but I want to thank you all for attending, and there'll be a link to the slides and video that Monica will email you, and be sure to stay aware of what's happening with New York User Group, NYOUG.org, and all the links that Coleman showed at the beginning will be in the slides later, or be in the presentation later that you can look at if you didn't write them down right away. So let's go back to questions and chat. Nothing. Okay. I guess everybody's asleep, or they agree with everything I said, and I made it so clear that there's no questions, which is good.
Last call for questions, guys. Thank you so much, Peter, for your time today.
You're welcome.
Awesome. And like Peter said, you will get a copy of the slides, and it'll take a little bit for this video to finish rendering, but once it does, I'll email that to you as well. So thank you everyone so much. And if you do have any questions, or if you need to get in touch with Peter, just let me or Coleman at NYOUG know, and we can help facilitate that. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great day. Thanks again to NYOUG. Thank you, Peter. And thank you all for attending.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Have a great day, everyone.